Right, how are we doing everybody, and welcome to Russell Heritage Golf. Today we're talking about the hips, coming in towards this pre-impact area to give yourself the best chance of swinging the club on plane. What we're going to be talking about on the channel upcoming is very much about how we keep the club on plane and how we move the body, and what we're trying to do is just dissect it one bit at a time. So last week talked a lot about the backswing and the different types of hip rotation that can exist. What I've also started to talk about is the sequence of events in towards the downswing. So we talked about getting the hips back to square. We talked about the effect that the rotation has on the lead arm, which pulls it down. And then what we started to talk about in the last video was timing and what that basically means, which is the ability obviously to return the club face square. Now when I explain these things in lessons, people much, should we say, better improves their level of understanding as to what it is that they need to do. But at the same token, one of the pitfalls still is this ability to be able to stay in posture coming in towards pre-impact. So eventually when you hit the ball, you will, should we say, have a degree of extension as you rise up. That has to exist, right? And one of the reasons is because this shoulder is going to go back. You need to be able to alleviate weight off that left-hand side. So when you hit it, you need to come up. But what you don't want to do is come up too soon. So if I reintroduce my hip bar, which is something that I'd strongly suggest that you have as a point of reference if you're practicing at home, the idea is that it would be, should we say, touching in posture, and then as you turn you should gently push it back. In transition you then want to make sure you can get both hips back on the bar, and that's what would initiate this movement here. Now what I'm saying is that if I keep pulling my left hip back and I keep turning, you can see the way that it helps me bring the club round and on plane to the point now where I can kind of down cock and start to potentially come up a little bit with the hit. What a lot of amateur golfers do is that, within lessons obviously, is that they would swing back okay, they would learn to transition, but then the hit would still be this way. And then what happens when you do this is that you're forced to swing out twin. Or you're forced to compensate by getting the club stuck underneath so you can try and hit the inner part of the ball. But then either way, what happens is that if you go this way, you're going to swing out to win, so then you're going to think, oh, I've got to try and hit more on the inner part of the ball, and then you turn into this golfer who then goes, oh, I'm getting stuck and the club face is too open coming into the hit, and then they try and do different things. And it's amazing, I'm talking across the board, I'm talking like, okay, not necessarily a complete beginner golfer, but I'm talking high handicap golfer down to very low aspiring professional golfer have these same tendencies, but just in a larger volume. So what you need to do is that you would swing up to the top and you'd get your hips square. But then as you continue to come down, you need to keep pulling this lead hip back. So from a face-on perspective, it's like you would swing up, from here you would transition, and then from here, see the way my hip has to keep coming back. A lot of golfers now get stuck, so they start to either lift up and extend, or they continue to slide. But the problem is like I said, now this gives you an inability to keep bringing the club down on plane, and it would induce an early release, which then means that you look too flicky. So you can end up doing great work in the backswing, a really good job of the transition, and then you're messing it up with the hip because of this sort of lifting forward motion. So it's really important that you understand that you have to keep this left hip back. How do you work on it? Probably the best suggestion would be the hip bar, so you have a point of reference. What's also a good suggestion is, as I've done, from a face-on perspective, or as if you were looking down from your perspective, you want to make sure you keep the hips in between your ankle line. That would be a good way. So make sure that your hips aren't surpassing that ankle line coming in towards the hit. You've also got to remember that in golf, as there is in all sports and all disciplines really, is that there's always going to be a retraction. So by pulling the left hip back and the left shoulder back is what's going to enable the right hip, if you like, and the right shoulder to fire through with club head speed. So sometimes just understanding that would help you improve this hitting area. So what we're trying to get rid of is back, transition, and a bit drifty and a little bit stuck. Although that seems dramatized, you'd be amazed how many people struggle with that. And then what happens is they'll start trying to do these drills, but then, you know, they'll end up drifting forward and shanking it or pulling it or whatever. And what we're trying to do now is make sure that you get up, transition, and then keep that left hip working back into the center of the stance, so it enables the club to fire through, keeps you on plane because it keeps your spine within the angle that you can swing on plane. So it's a really important component of the golf swing and something that potentially often gets overlooked. It's like you could swing up, you can transition, you've done a large proportion of the work that you need to be able to be consistent in your golf swing. But from here, don't drift, otherwise you ruin all of it. From here, keep pulling that left hip back, and then you can fire the club through. Hopefully enjoy the video. I always appreciate a thumbs up and a like. Remember, it's free to press that subscribe button. If you're going to do it, you might as well press the little bell icon, because that means you receive notifications every time a new video comes out. Keep pulling that hip back. That allows you to fire the club through. Catch up with you guys again soon.